if you listen to everyone's opinion, I would be changing my meat every single day. Right. So how do you create what you're proud of and putting out? And I feel like if you're proud of what you're putting out to your guests, then that is what is needed to be. It doesn't need to be what Aaron Franklin thinks is great, or Law Barbecue, or all these older guys in Allen's in North Carolina. Like, it needs to be what you think is great. And that's what I tell people when I go to a class. Barbecue is meant to take home and change around.
This is the Meat America Podcast, presented by Code 3 Spices, produced by Red Meat Lover. And now your host, Joey and Mike.
Welcome back to Meat America Podcast, presented by Code 3 Spices and sponsored by Grill Grate at grillgrate.com, Rockwood Charcoal at rockwoodcharcoal.com, and both can be found in retailers across the country. And finally, our sponsor, Arden Spirits. Today, we're shooting in the catering kitchen of Sweet Baby Ray's in Chicago. I'm Joe Lampe, also known as Joey Brisket, also known as the Chief Beef Officer of RedMeatLover.com and Red Meat Lover on YouTube. I'm here with my partner, Mike Radosevich.
What's up, JoJo?
What's happening, man? Mike, you are the co-owner of Code 3 Spices and Code 3 Barbecue Supply, and I'll let you introduce our guest from here.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is going to be a fun one, and as everybody's, the episodes are getting ready to be released here real soon, right? And they're seeing all these awesome guests. Well, we're just continuing to have awesome guests. So this is the first time I've actually met Charlie McKenna in person. I met his dad about, I think it was 8 years ago, Charlie, in St. Jacob, Illinois.
Yeah.
He was doing some classes up there for some awesome people, Roger and his wife. You're a two-time world champion.
Yes.
2006, 2016, correct?
Yeah.
World-known chef. I want to dive into it right from the beginning with your background, how you got started, and just sort of go from there. So if you could tell everybody how this all started, man.
Yeah, I mean, the cooking started basically when I was a young child, right? I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, and down in the South, we have a good tradition of all family meals being around the table, and as well as like holidays around the table. So I really got inspiration from my grandmother, Lillie. That's who the company's named after. And she's the one that got me in the kitchen cooking biscuits and gravy, country ham, that sort of stuff. So I kind of started there. My dad's mom was 100% German, so she brought over the culture of like making pickles, making their own sausages. So growing up, we were always doing those type of things: gardening, cooking at home, making pickles, making our own sausages, doing a lot of smoking, being from South Carolina, and just sort of playing in the backyard for the most part. Then I went to Florida State University, got my undergrad in hotel restaurant management. From there, I realized I actually wanted to be a chef in the kitchen, so I went to the CIA in New York, Culinary Institute of America. And then I kind of worked for some great chefs throughout the world, all in fine dining. All right. But as that went along, me and my dad, who are really close, wanted to be able to see each other more often. So we came up with this idea that we'd get into these barbecue competitions. So I started working on the rubs and sauces for that style. And then we started competing on the circuit back in 2005. Yeah, 2005. So then we just, started doing the circuit on barbecue, and it sort of transformed into a business. My dad, we have a restaurant in Florida, Destin, Florida, where my dad oversees that day to day. He's the only one basically working there. It's a shack, typical barbecue shack. Then I have the Lillie's Q that are in Chicago because I'm based out of Chicago.
Now, do we have one or two in Chicago?
So we have one main one we call the Mothership, which is inside a brewery downtown on Ashland Avenue. Then I have 4 units in the United Center where the Bulls and Blackhawks play. And those are the 5 here, and then one in Florida.
Let's back up to South Carolina.
Yeah.
So we were talking off camera. Joe, I went to school in Florence, South Carolina, Francis Marion University. I was just telling Charlie that it was sort of a culture shock.
Yeah.
I come from a town in Collinsville, Illinois, about 15 minutes outside of St. Louis, Roman Catholic. I'm basically Croatian, got a little French and a little Irish in me, but a lot of Roman Catholic. So on my way down there, I had a flat tire. And I learned out what fire ants were.
Oh, yeah, real quick.
I was like right off of I-95, probably an hour outside of Marion County there. But with that said, though, I fell in love with the Carolinas, and I couldn't imagine, I grew up on sweet St. Louis barbecue sauce, obviously pork steaks, the occasional ribs and pork butt and whatever. But when I got down to South Carolina, I never tasted that Carolina mustard sauce before.
My favorite.
and it became quickly one of my favorites. And the way you guys do pulled pork down there and the different types of woods that I've been cooking and grilling since I was 18 years old. But as a 19, 20, 21-year-old in college, being exposed to a Southern style of barbecue, I'd like to say it really got me geared towards, do I want to continue this or get into this passion of barbecue? I mean, can you talk about some of the flavor profiles and, the overall culpability of what South Carolina, North Carolina barbecue is?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a huge fan of Carolina barbecue, being that's basically where I'm from, and has spent a lot of time. And one thing that you kind of see, and you can see this throughout barbecue, is there's always these barbecue regions and different cities that have different slight flavor changes. And I think what you see in the Carolinas is obviously we cook mostly pork. I think if you walk into one of the better barbecue places, you won't even really see brisket. And it's because most of the pig farmers are in North and South Carolina, right, for the country. So a lot of that gets based off, hey, what is nearby, right? So what can we cook with nearby? And I think that's the best cooking in general, right? We're always taught to cook local from local farms. So if you get into the Carolinas, you got North Carolina, which basically has kind of two flavor profiles, the western side of the state and the eastern side of the state. On the east side of the state, that's where they cook the whole pigs over live fire, brick pits or pits that have been made out of metal. And the idea is that they take all that meat out of the pig when it's finished and they chop it all up into like what's called pulled pork, and they use a straight vinegar sauce. And the reason they do that is because when you take all the meat and you scrape it down to the skin and all you're leaving basically is the crackling left, you have a lot of fat content within that pig. So you need something to cut that. So that's where they started out with that eastern North Carolina, straight vinegar and spice. Some have some higher heat levels than others, but typically it's apple cider vinegar and some type of spices inside there. You go to the western side of the state, North Carolina, that's where you get into your tomato and vinegar sauce. Now, tomato can be ketchup, raw tomatoes, tomato paste, some type of tomato product mixed with that vinegar, still vinegar heavy, because on the western side of the state, they cook whole shoulders, right, which still have a decent kind of fat content. And basically, they season them with straight salt and pepper. So a lot of the basic flavor profiles are let the pig speak for itself with its pork flavor, not so much covered up with a rub, and then also you have this apple cider vinegar which cuts fat.
And it's funny that you mentioned that. You're into a lot of barbecue restaurants across the country. You get to taste from all over the U.S. And I think that's one of the main things that a lot of, especially new restaurants, new barbecue restaurant joints that come out,
yes,
man, they just drown that flavor of the pig or brisket or whatever it is with whatever it is, sauce or whatever.
It's it is an overkill in my fine dining days, right? You were taught, and coming from the CIA and working for these great chefs that are great throughout the world, right? Their mindset is that you should be able to taste multiple different things. If you're eating beef, then you should definitely be able to taste beef flavor. If you're covering up your barbecue with so much stuff that you can't actually taste what the product is, whether that be, if you subbed it blind tasting and you could do chicken, beef, and pork, and they all tasted very, very similar, then you're probably doing a little too much to the meat. Now, if you're buying a little bit lower quality meat, you probably need to add some more stuff to it. But if you're buying from local farms and local producers or great farmers that are producing great pigs or great beef, then you're going to be able to do a little bit less nuanced, right? So my mindset is always you want to taste the protein, you want to taste a little bit of the rub, you want to taste a little bit of the smoke flavor on it, not overpowering, but there should be some smoke flavor, and then you can taste little nuances of each piece of meat, right? So
I think that's a terrific explanation. I want to dig into your fine dining experience, but before we do that, I want to kind of stay on the Carolina fairs, right?
Explore the methods and recipes for cooking meat in restaurants across America as we showcase experts on location in their restaurant kitchens to educate, inspire, and entertain. Tune into our travel cooking show, Meet America, only on YouTube and redmeatlover.com.
So I think the Carolinas are two of those states that, some states are known for barbecue or some other type of, they do barbecue and they do seafood really well, right?
Yes.
And so I noticed that you have a shrimp tattooed on your forearm.
Yep.
Is that born out of the
So yeah,
Regional fare?
I have 2 tattoos on my body. One's a pig, one's a shrimp. Basically, you could probably figure out those are 2 of my most favorite things to cook, which they are. But they do have also meaning. Obviously, the pork comes in with Lillie's Q, cooking a lot of pork, traveling through the barbecue circuit. The shrimp actually comes into effect that, like as you said, my dad actually went to the Citadel, which is a military school in Charleston. So we've always grown up with this big seafood-oriented family. And you can tell by the Carolinas, right, with barbecue and seafood is their coastal. They're coastal states as well, right? So they have a coastal area and they have a land area, and the land area kind of predominant barbecue, and the coastal kind of more seafood. My grandfather had a house in Destin, Florida, where we have one of the restaurants, and I'd go down there since I was 5, and he was big into he had a special fried shrimp recipe. So like shrimp is also so versatile. I mean, you can take on so many different flavor profiles and so many different cuisines. Like you see it in, Chinese food, you see it in Vietnamese food, you see it in American food, you see it in French food, right? So the shrimp is really a versatile item. So I love cooking shrimp, grilling, smoking with shrimp, and doing those type of things. So that's sort of where the coastal/land grab kind of comes
the
in
one
my
thing
career.
I'll talk about Carolina seafood and whatnot. When I was in Florence, South Carolina, going to college, we had this little place called J. Michael's. And it was literally the first time I ever had oysters. Yep. Because being from St. Louis, we don't have a lot of oysters floating around.
Yeah.
In the Mississippi River or anything like that.
No.
But we'd get a pitcher of beer for $4, and we'd get oysters for 25 cents a pop.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with oysters, and I got a lot of family from New Orleans, so then I got introduced to the char grilled, and that's all I love right now.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
That's one of my favorites too.
Boy, you were old, man. You're not buying oysters for 25 cents a pop anymore.
anymore.
No, I mean, I remember when I was little, we used to go out in the bay in Apalachicola and get our own, right? And then we'd go back, ice them down, ice cold, pop them open, that liquor inside, you just strip it down, with a couple beers on the back patio. I mean, you can just crush them. Right?
It's one of my favorite meals to eat. I have to go across the river into your neck of the woods to Bob's Seafood.
Yeah.
To get those.
Yeah, well, last time I was out in Charleston, and I was asking, what are the great places to eat?
Yep.
And my driver kept on talking about this low country boil. I'd never actually heard the term before. Can you share with our audience a little bit more about what a low country boil is?
So it's very very similar to what you get out of Louisiana when you get a crawfish boil, right? You're going to have the crawfish, you're going to have potatoes, you're going to have corn. Sometimes they may throw some type of lima bean or wax bean in there, and then it's seasoned with some type of seasoning / liquid. You boil the vegetables till they're basically finished. Then you drop the seafood in for the last few minutes just so it doesn't overcook. By that time, you drain it on a table and you throw some spices on it, basically, right? So that's kind of the same concept with low country boil, except we use more shrimp and less crayfish. So a lot of shrimp, a lot of sausages in those, potatoes, corn, very heavily seasoned liquid. And then when you pull it out, I usually sprinkle some more seasoning on top just to add that little kick at the end. It's a great, in the South, as Mike will tell you, there's a lot of family reunions and that kind of thing. So those type of big plate meals, oysters on a table, oyster roast, and low country boils, fried chicken, right?
Yeah.
Barbecue. Those type of family meals are ingrained in all of us since we were, come out of the womb. So that's it, and it's relatively cheap if you go and buy everything yourself and do it yourself. So.
Well, and that was the other thing too. Whenever I left high school, college, and our area back home, head down to South Carolina, and you talk about it was sort of a culture shock for me because it was my first place to go.
Yeah.
But it was the people that I fell in love with. It was the sense of community in these small towns.
Yes.
All these rural roads.
Yep.
I had never seen 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people at a high school football game in my life before.
Yep.
It was incredible. But after that football game, they were tailgating, and all it was barbecue.
Yeah.
It's just an awesome place down there. It's
the culture down in the Carolinas is wonderful. I mean, they have great people. They're willing to help you out. It's a very family oriented, hey, we're all together in this. Let's get through this type of mentality. And it's a great place to live. It's a great place to raise children if you have children, or a great place to be raised. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love Dorchester County, Charleston,
Oh, yeah.
Columbia. I got into a lot of trouble in Columbia at 5 Points throughout the college years. But
Columbia, I do a lot of boar hunting down there, actually.
I love to go boar hunting down there.
Yeah.
I got some buddies into that.
So there's a place called Carolina Plantation. They have, in my opinion, some of the best grits, stone ground grits on the planet. You can look them up. But also they have a hunting club called Robin's Neck, and they do a lot of boar hunting out of that, the same farm where they grow all the rice.
Let's dive into 2006.
Yeah.
The World Championship.
I made a mistake. It's 2007 and 16.
Okay,
2006 was
2007
fourth
and 16.
place. Shoulder.
Okay. So two-time world champ. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
When did your competition career start? Because I know your dad was heavily involved.
Yeah. So he started kind of dabbling in it probably 2004, and then I got in late 2004. Then 2005, we really started kicking it off. So it took us a couple years to get going. And like I said, I was already in fine dining and worked for some of the best chefs in the world at this point. And I think our first barbecue competition, you come in, you're a 20-something-year-old young kid, you're working in some of the best restaurants in the world. You're like, dude, I'm going to ace this, right?
Right.
Yeah, we got smoked. No pun intended.
Well,
we
Go
got
ahead,
killed.
I just want to step back. We have a pretty diverse audience. So
We do.
can you tell, people at home really put it in context what it means to be a world champion and what the title and the award means? Because there may be people listening who've, tuned into us before who just aren't that plugged into the barbecue world. May not know.
I mean, Memphis in May, it's the holy grail of barbecue.
Yeah.
It's, Chris and I have 2 perfect scores for our products there. He did it on a cooking level, and it's the best of the best.
Yeah.
I mean, why don't you elaborate on that a little bit, because you walk that stage.
So there's 2 major competitions in my mind: Memphis in May, and then the Kansas City Royal, which is in September. These are basically considered the World Series, the Super Bowl, all of them. So the best of the best teams are going to be at these 2 competitions. If you win one of them, you're basically considered a world champion.
Mm-hmm.
It is very hard to win those competitions, and mainly because the best cooking guys show up to these. They carry the most weight trophy-wise, and they also carry the most weight money-wise, right? So you have a lot of people that show up. So it's the Super Bowl. I mean, Memphis is nicknamed the Super Bowl of swine, right? Because it's all pork at this categories. So, I mean, it's like winning the Super Bowl in football. This is our Super Bowl for cooking barbecue. So it's exhilarating. It's unbelievable. And the competition you cook against is like none you will ever see at
second to
any
none.
other. Yeah, if you're at one of those 2 competitions, you're not getting any better at some other competition in Texas or Florida or any other.
Well, here
competition.
you are. So we'll touch on that. So we talked in a previous episode with Mike Johnson. I caught some flack online one day because I said a lot of classically trained chefs don't want to touch barbecue.
Yeah.
And when they do touch barbecue, they're really blown back with the science behind barbecue.
Oh yeah.
That's why I think barbecue, in my opinion, is one of the most beautiful meals you can create for anybody, because all the love and attention to detail that goes
Yes.
into it.
I think people don't understand the attention to detail that people take into barbecue. So for Memphis and May in particular, right? And you couldn't cook the product you cook at Memphis in your restaurants because the pork sandwich would be $25, right? Because we're doing extra rubs. Maybe we're doing an injection. Maybe we're doing a spritz at the end. Maybe the attention to detail. I get down to a complete timeline on when things get trimmed, when it goes in the smoker, how many pieces of wood, how big the pieces of wood are going in the fire. Like I measure them before I come down and cut them to the exact sizes so that I know I'm getting the exact flavor that I'm hoping to get for the judges. What glaze is on it, all sorts of stuff. I mean, the science everyone knows cooking is science, and you can tell by looking at a restaurant like here in Chicago, Alinea, right? They're doing edible balloons and stuff. So all cooking is science, and it's who can take that science and really perfect it, right? And barbecue, when I left the fine dining industry and went into barbecue, like when I opened Lillie's Q, a lot of my friends that were in these fine dining restaurants are like, "Oh, you're cooking barbecue now," sort of like a backhanded compliment. Almost.
That's
like,
what Mike Johnson said.
oh, you open your
too.
place.
That's
It's kind of like,
exactly
oh
what he
yeah.
said.
Then I'm like, oh, why don't you come spend a day staging, basically working for free in my restaurant, and then they would see how much attention to detail we were taking to when the wood goes on, how it's lit, how it's burning, how fast it's burning, how hot it's burning, all that sort of stuff. And at the end of it, they were all like, all right, this is legit. This is something that I should probably be trying to learn as well.
Well, and
right?
barbecue's not like riding a bike either, where you can go 5-6 years and hop back on the bike.
No.
You can't do that with barbecue. It's forever changing.
Yes.
And right now, especially, I mean, my business partner is one of the best cooks in the country.
Yeah.
Give a shout out to Chris real quick. He just got his first golden ticket in Peoria.
Well, first one of the year.
First one
He
of the
was
year.
It was at the world stage last year.
Yeah, world stage last year. So shout out to Chris on that. But my point is, I mean, you got guys like Meathead that dive into
super science.
These guys do that with the Red Meat Lover show. And I have a barbecue supply as well. So me and my partner do, and we got a lot of women coming in now and buying their first smoker.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because you've got everything on. You've got Google for one. You've got Malcolm Reed, who's got a great YouTube channel.
there is so much more information now that you can get than when, let's say, I started. When I started, it was like, hey, talk to the guy that's next to you. Obviously, barbecue is a community type event. Everyone's friendly. There's a lot of downtime waiting for things to cook, so you're a lot of drinking going on. Right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times I say I got into barbecues because I like drinking, not because I liked actually cooking barbecue.
We've heard that from a couple different people.
But
actually,
back in the day, you're right, you would have to talk to someone else that had already learned from their past experiences, right, on how they messed things up and what they did to change them. And obviously, barbecue guys, I'm going to tell you as much as I can, but there's also some things I keep close to the vest.
Sure.
Mainly because I still compete. Once I stop competing, I'll tell everyone every single thing I do.
Right.
But the mindset is, online now you can jump years in advance because there are people telling you a lot of great information that you actually had to go make friends before to get. So I think nowadays that people are getting into, it's just like anything else. You can find, like, I've seen people re-showering their showers now because they watched a YouTube video.
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys are insane. But
It's
okay,
crazy.
but like now people are cooking barbecue because they watched a bunch of YouTube channels, which is great because the more knowledge and the more we spread it, the more people want to eat it, the more people buy my products and hopefully go to my restaurants is kind of the key. So my mindset is always rising tide brings up all ships.
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
That's funny that you say that, man, because I mean that's literally me and my business partner's mantra.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time. With this launching this podcast and in your cooking show, you have to do that. It's a very close knit, tight industry to begin with.
Yep.
We'll dive in real quick to your potato chips and your sauces, which your sauces are excellent, by the way.
Thank you.
And we can tell people where to get those
Yeah.
at the end of the podcast and whatnot. One of the things that I was impressed with was how clean your bottles look.
Yeah.
It is a premium style sauce.
Correct.
We have a premium sauce as well, or a premium price sauce.
Yes.
We have plastic. You have glass.
Yes.
Your labels are crisp, clear, very readable. They stick out on the shelves, and there's not a lot of barbecue sauces that stick out on the shelves because
Correct.
one, you've got 27 SKUs of Sweet Baby Ray's taking up a quarter
Yeah.
of the row.
Three quarters probably.
3/4 of the row.
Which is great for them.
Yeah, it's good for them too. But I mean, like, what was did you take that into consideration going into the whole overall view and packaging of your products?
So my mindset was never to be a product. I was never going to be a product company. I was opening a restaurant, and my mindset was people were going to eat my food, and hopefully they would want to take one of the 6 sauces that I had actually created for the circuit, so that we were in different cities. They were eating their home flavors. Basically, was how it came about. But I do everything I do. I want to be different than someone else. So if I looked at the shelf and it was all a similar bottle, I was going completely different. The other thing that I really liked and came from my fine dining background was that everyone eats with their eyes first. So everything for me needs to be like super sexy, right? So I wanted a sexy bottle with a sexy label with the wax dip closure, hand dip basically. So that's kind of how my mindset started thinking. And then I started finding different bottles and other products out there that maybe weren't in the barbecue set that had clean labels. And then that's sort of how I started to roll that out. But that was the mindset behind it, that like, one, I have to be different than everybody else. And 2, how do I keep it really like crisp and clean? Because that was my background coming from fine dining, where you plate on white plates and you're putting herbs on with tweezers, right? So,
and one thing he's touching on, and I learned this from Dave Raymond 6 years ago, is staying power. You
Yes.
know, we were talking off camera before the show. You've been taking off some shelves. We've been taking off the shelves.
Yeah.
It's a real shitty feeling.
oh, it feels like you just got kicked in the balls.
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. And how do you reconnect or redefine or whatever? But everything that he's doing with his brand is right. It's creating staying power to stay on those shelves.
I mean, one of the things that I always tell my cooks, and I also tell other restaurateurs or other chefs that are coming up that want to, just pick my brain, is the hospitality / food product business, restaurant business. I kind of wrap them all to one. You always have to be evolving. All right. So if a shark stops swimming, he dies. So that's our mindset. We're always swimming forward, going somewhere, whether that be tweaking the products we have to make them better, to make them more conducive to the market, like keto or all natural, any of those things. So we're always progressing. The new products coming out are always going to be products that are going on the up and rise, not going on the down slope. So even in restaurants, my day-to-day mindset is like, most people would think, oh yeah, I cooked a brisket today and that's how I cooked it for the last 10 years. That's completely untrue.
Right.
I was trying a new method on brisket 2 days ago because I saw something online and saw another barbecue guy doing this and said, hey, maybe it's better. Let me try it and see if it's better than my method right now. Right. And then you may take a little bit of what you found out and put it into your method. And that's the great thing about cooking is like, everybody's learning things from other people as well, right? Like you see guys on the internet, or you see them at a competition, or you see them in their restaurant, and they give you a little tidbit, and you take that back and you use it, and maybe you expand on it a little bit. And that's the great thing, is just always stay evolving, and you'll always stay ahead of the curve.
Well, right. I mean, as long as you have all the answers, right?
Yeah.
You can never learn anything new.
Yeah.
I hear a lot about your classical training as you talk, and how it's impacting what you're doing, not only in your restaurant, but with your products, which I think is a really neat angle to kind of to hear. You talked earlier about a sort of a stigma of a classically trained chef going into barbecue. So it's really a two-part question. Can you tell me more about why that stigma exists, A, and B, how that training continues to impact your cooking? I think you touched upon it a little bit about the constantly evolving, but what's happening with the stigma? And
I think there's two sides of the stigma, right? You get this. I got the stigma from my friends that were in fine dining, and were like, "Oh, you're going to cook a lower end food,"
Right.
And then you get the stigma from the actual barbecue guys, where you're like, "Oh, you got this fancy guy coming over here trying to cook barbecue," right? So it kind of came from both angles when I first started getting into it. Now there are more people out there, like Mike Johnson and stuff, that came from a chef background, fine dining background, and started cooking barbecue. And I think the stigma's dropped off because some of us have done very well in that area. So we kind of got our street cred, let's say. But there definitely is the stigma from the backyard guys that some fancy chef's doing it, and the stigma from the chef side. It's like, oh, you're cooking a lower end food. Now, one thing I think that you've seen in the last couple of years on the chef side is you're getting like, the David Changs of the world start cooking fried chicken, and that's the food chefs actually eat. So now they're like, why don't I just go perfect what I want my fried chicken to be? So I think that stigma from that side is releasing a little bit. So
you talked about, you mentioned the word mindset a couple times. Me and Joey, we're real big on mindset driven.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just how we're built. We try to be successful in all areas of our life. You're a young man. I mean, I'm assuming we're right around the same age. You're probably about 40, right?
I'm 44. Yeah.
Okay. You got a couple years on me. So, I'll be 43 here in October, and me and my business partner have reached a certain level of success. I wouldn't say an early age. We've only been in business about 8 years.
Yeah.
But over time, this is all you've known. Your entire passion, cooking, chef life, all that. Also a two-part question. Obviously, you have one of the best cooks in the world in your father.
Yep.
So you had that as a mentorship coming up. Who else has sort of influenced you?
Yeah, I mean, I take influence from everywhere, right? So obviously, all of us have smartphones nowadays, and I walk around with a note in my phone, and every time I think of an idea or see something I like, I take a note.
I like that. It's practical.
And I go back and look at those notes. If I don't take it right then I'll forget it down the road. I'll be like, what was I thinking about that, an hour ago? So I literally write notes down. Or if I'm talking to a great barbecue guy from the range of, Tuffy Stone to a great chef that's cooking food, I'm always listening for things that I can implement into my career and my life. And it comes from different angles all the time. It may come from like a backyard person that says, oh, I saw this on the internet and I hadn't seen that yet, right? So I'll take notes on all this stuff. Or if I have dish ideas or ideas to, tweak brisket or pork or any of this stuff, I write them down. That way I can go back to them when I'm actually have some time, put my complete thought together, and then go back and try what I'm trying to do.
Here's what I love about guys like him and Mike Johnson. So obviously I have 6 or 7 sugar fires around our neck of the woods every 15, 20 miles.
Yeah.
It's the sides, man.
Yeah.
Growing up, you didn't have these sides that guys like you and Mike are producing.
No.
And it's just that chef flair, that experience that you have on the non-world of barbecue.
Yep.
Because barbecue critics are they're pretty brutal, dude.
The people that judge barbecue, and I say this, is everyone because everyone has grilled at home, or their dad made a steak when they were younger, or they cook on their Weber, any of this stuff. So everyone thinks they have some bit of knowledge in barbecue. When I was fine dining, there'd be people like, I have no idea how to make a hollandaise. Correct. Mm-hmm. You have no clue. Everyone thinks they know a little bit about what actually is grilling, but barbecue, right?
Correct.
So then you have the maniacal people who come from a barbecue region I'm from South Carolina. Just because you're from somewhere doesn't mean you know anything about anything, in my opinion. You have to study it just like everybody else. But like you said, there's a lot of passion, let's call it, behind barbecue and judging barbecue. And one of my issues with a lot of barbecue places is they may have 1 or 2 unbelievable meats, but I judge a place on if you're serving it, I'm judging it. Right? So, and maybe that comes a little bit from the competition side, because if you serve it with sauce, they judge you on the sauce and the meat. If you don't serve a sauce, you don't get judged on sauce.
Right.
So the mindset is like, and if you're coming into Lillie's Q, I'm trying to perfect everything that I'm presenting you, whether that be down to the potato salad, all the way up to the pork shoulder that I'm cooking.
What are you most proud of as far as, let's just take Lillie's Q overall.
Yeah.
What are you most proud of with the overall experience? And it could be anything from the food to the customer service to how it evolved.
Yeah, I would say the food is probably my top proudest part. The passion that we've put behind, that I put into, Lillie's Q in Chicago has been open since 2010, so 10 years. Actually, July 29th will be 10 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, which is I feel in a major city like Chicago, with how many restaurants we have, kind of pre-COVID, it's like 20 years.
Staying power. We were just talking about
smaller
staying power,
town, right? It's like restaurants here close within a year, like it's going out of style. So, I think if you don't have a great quality food product, you will not last in Chicago. Even if you have great service, you still need the great food. So I'm really proud of how much time I put into the food before we opened Lillie's Q in Chicago, as well as how much we've progressed and continued to create excellence, and hear people say, I haven't eaten here since 2011. And in my mind, it's exactly the same, because that's what I'm trying to do. In the home of McDonald's, I want consistency. I hope for the most part that what my dad is cooking in Florida is very similar. Now, I know it's not, because he's 73 and he takes some shortcuts that I don't take, but we won't mention that.
Sure. Of course. We'll bleep that out.
But
sorry, Keto.
But for the most part, I want people to have consistency and a great food when they come in. If they have if there's anywhere lacking, I would rather it be in service than it be in food, for sure.
Yeah.
Coming from my chef background.
The one thing that's just very clear to me, and I'm sure anyone listening right now, is the passion you have for what you do. I mean, that's just really is hit me right here.
Well, how can you be good at anything if you don't have a passion?
And that's true. And I think that when there's so much talk about people who are passionate about this, that, and the other thing, and I think a forgotten portion of passion is you love something so much you're willing to suffer for it.
Yes.
Can you tell us, I think, any business owner that's succeeding like you are has something to share with someone who's looking to maybe go where you are, but there's always challenges. Can you share with us and our audience some challenges you experienced in, transitioning and from, being an employee to being an employer?
Yeah. I think if you're going to get in the hospitality business, whether that be making food products or running restaurants, I think you are going to make quite a few sacrifices if you want to be successful in this business, right? I used to work every holiday, every weekend, and that was from 18 and I'm 44. I don't think there are weekends I had taken off, obviously, to compete in competitions and go on vacation here and there. But like, for the most part, I spend 60 to 100 hours, depending on the week, working every single week. And I have since I was 18 years old. So you make a sacrifice, whether that be not around your family as much, not around your friends as much. So that's probably the first sacrifice that you'd have to be willing to make. Then you have to have a very thick skin, in what my opinion is. If you have a products company or a restaurant, you have people, and I think it's one of the only careers that gets it to the extent is we're getting reviewed by every single person that buys our product or eats at our restaurant every day, all day long, right? Someone that works for a finance firm downtown is not getting a Yelp review on how their food tastes, which is a direct, back to me on what's going on.
Sure.
So I think you have to have a thick skin as well, and be able to just, put your head down, know you have a plan and you're going towards that plan, and then staying the course, right? If you listen to everyone's opinion, I would be changing my meat every single day. Right. So how do you create what you're proud of and putting out? And I feel like if you're proud of what you're putting out to your guests, then that is what is needed to be. It doesn't need to be what Aaron Franklin thinks is great, or Law Barbecue, or, all these older guys in Allen's in North Carolina. Like, it needs to be what you think is great. And that's what I tell people when I go to a class. Barbecue is meant to take home and change around. Mm-hmm. I'm going to teach you the method on how to cook a pork butt in a class. Your mindset is you should go find a rub you like. You should find a glaze you like. I love it. You should do. I love it. If you want to put guava all over your pork butt because you love guava,
put your finishing touch on it, man.
I don't think there's any rules to it. The old school people that dictate, no, Texas brisket has to be pepper, salt, and Why?
Yeah, that's
Amen.
You talked about the
glad
groups
you
and the
said that.
people in the groups, because these are the people that I refer to as the meat elitist of the world, right? There might be a couple wrong ways to cook and prepare food, but there's many, many different right ways, and being open to that is, as you were talking
If my
about.
pork butt is super juicy and super flavorful, why does it matter even how I got there?
Right.
If I have a flavor profile you like, yes, it may be different than what you're used to, and most people like what they grew up with. So if it's different than what you're used to, it doesn't mean it's bad. It means it's different. It can still be really great. I've tasted some Asian barbecue that was on a baby back rib that was phenomenal. Was it what I would cook in competition? No, because it's not what the judges are looking for.
Right.
But was it still unbelievable piece of pork rib? Yes.
It's all in product in my mind. I mean, I do a lot of cooking for I'm a single guy. Well, I got a girlfriend, but overall, I'm a single guy with 2 kids in my house most of the time. I got lots of neighbors that I cook for all the time. Perfect example. You were at my house a couple weekends ago.
Great pork steak.
Pork steak, right?
It was great.
So it was a 2-inch pork steak smoked for like 5.5 hours.
Yeah.
No one in St. Louis really does that. It's a direct grilled, heavily sauced, sweet barbecue sauce. So it's really the end product. And I love how you describe that, because we catch a lot of on Instagram, because we do a lot of IGTV videos. We do a lot of stories, live fire cooking stories. We're not editing and throwing it up there.
Yeah.
I can't stand those guys that do that. But what I'm getting at though is like, it's that whole mindset of what barbecue is. Barbecue is what you make of it.
Correct.
That bottom line.
Barbecue to me is cooking over some type of fire, whether that be, gas is still fire, right? Is it my preferred choice? No.
Right.
Obviously, if I'm going for flavor, I'm cooking with real wood 100% of the time first. Not everyone can come home and cook a 5-hour rib.
Right.
Right? You have families that you want to cook. So yes, gas grills have their place in this world. Tuesday night, needed chicken breast for my kid. She's crying. Boom, let's get this going,
Yeah.
right? I'm not starting a fire and waiting 30 minutes to get that going. So my mindset of barbecue is the same thing. As long as you're cooking with fire, you can go into whatever flavor profile you want and wherever you want. The belief that it's only one way is, I think, very close-minded, and you wouldn't have restaurants like a Linea if they stuck to the French, this is how you make things.
Mm-hmm.
I think in barbecue, you're starting to see a lot more of that, where you see different chefs kind of tweaking things and running things. I do that a lot of Lillie's for my specials, right? Like I love cumin beef, a Chinese dish. So I started doing a cumin beef short rib, right? They use short rib as well.
ridiculously amazing.
Now, instead of me cooking it in a wok, I'm cooking it in a smoker long term. And I'm still doing the same thing, breaking down the intermuscular fat, breaking down the intermuscular collagen so that I can get a moist short rib, just like they do when they braise it and then wok it. So it's very similar all around the world, but I'm cooking with live fire and smoke, and they're cooking with a wok, right? So I don't think there's any reason that you shouldn't just do whatever you want. And if your family likes it, that's good enough for me.
That's what it comes down to, in my personal opinion as well. I mean, let me ask you this. We're doing pretty good on time. We got about 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
2 things I want to ask is, Joe usually asks this question, what's next for Lillie's Q? What's next for Charlie McKenna? The other question is that we've got a very diverse crowd that listens and will be watching this.
Yeah.
What is your best piece of advice to give to that young chef that is just starting out?
Okay. So the next thing probably for Lillie's Q is just obviously with the climate that we're in, with what's going on out in the U.S., whether it be from protests to the COVID, is kind of stay the course right now. See where we're at, continue to push our products, right? We're in roughly 10,000 grocery stores in the U.S. and 9 countries. So hopefully growing that into more stores, more locations, getting in front of more people so that they can try my product, because that's what it's about. Restaurant-wise, we're just clicking along. We were actually supposed to have Wrigley Field this year as another like offshoot stand, but obviously they'll come in 2021 when fans can come back to the stands. So restaurant-wise, just keep evolving, keep perfecting all the time. And then my biggest thing for young chefs that want to cook food in the genre that we're in, which is barbecue, is you have to learn whatever you're cooking on. All right?
Great point.
The biggest thing is to be able to control your fire, whether that be in a gas grill, whether that be in a Weber Smoky Mountain, whether that be in a backwoods, whether that's in a propane tank that someone built in Texas. You have to understand what happens when you put logs on and off, how that adjusts the fire, how that adjusts the cooking chamber temperature, and how much smoke is going in the chamber. Once you learn those things, then you can start to, genre out and start to play with all sorts of different meats and different flavor profiles. But my biggest thing is learn whatever you're cooking on to be able to execute exact temperatures.
Yeah.
Two awesome points: fire management.
Yep.
And don't get discouraged because barbecue will chew your ass up and.
Oh my God!
Kick
Like I
out the
said,
door.
the first barbecue contest we did, I think we took second to last in every category, and I was coming from like big time restaurants.
Right.
I could have easily been like, maybe this isn't for me. No, this is for me. I'm going to figure out what I did wrong and go back and fix it.
Barbecue's humbling.
And you learn way more from your mistakes, like everyone says in almost every industry.
Well-
you learn more from your mistakes than you ever learn from your successes. And especially in cooking barbecue, right? Because you're going to know, oh, the heat spiked. Oh, I let it go too long. Oh, it rose in temperature and I wasn't paying attention. So it overcooked a little bit. It's a little dry. All those things are learning techniques, and then you use those to perfect your method.
Yeah, where I see people being successful is through the ability to keep failing. But I don't really like to think. I like to think of it as another F word: feedback on what works and what doesn't work. And I think that's what you were really. So often we're just categorizing, whether it's in barbecue or in life, things as either good or bad. And really, what it comes down to. Does it work or does it not work?
Yeah.
Either around the pit or in my life, so I think that's something, I hear from you, and, I also hear that ability to just keep going, right? And just keep trying new things. And it's inspirational for me.
If it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
It's no joke.
That's the thing. It's like there's days I want to quit my own company. Okay. And you own the thing and you're like, I can't fire myself. How do I get out
and
of this
things
mess?
are doing pretty
Right?
good too.
Yeah. And people from the outside are like, you're pretty successful. And
Yeah.
I like to think I am because I put my head down and work. But there are days that I'm like, I would quit right now if someone was like willing to just let me out of this thing.
Right.
Yeah, but guys
So-
like you though are, and the majority of guys like you and guys like me and Chris and everybody else, we're not content because we're highly competitive.
Yes.
And you want to continue to be better every single day.
Yes.
I talked with Dave Raymond for 2 hours about that last night. I'm never going to be content with
No.
the end product of our sales or the customer experience or whatever it might be.
There's something out there that I haven't done or tried to make my barbecue better. So then I still have to go find what that is. And when it does, then it comes back around and I win Memphis again.
Yeah.
Right.
So like always evolving. I mean, 2007 to 2016 seems like a long stretch. In barbecue, to win more than one is not very often. But to win it with a far stretch like that means I kept trying and
Right.
kept working on my flavor profiles to fit whatever the judges were looking for. Now, in between there, I had like 8 top 10s or something like
Sure.
that. So like we're on the right path. But if you, like I said, you stop evolving or stop swimming, you're going to get passed by.
Right. Now, you mentioned Dave Raymond, and I just want to let everyone at home know who may not have heard our last podcast that is Sweet Baby Ray.
Yes.
He's the guy who started Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. They're on every
I think it
store
was
shelf.
1982.
On every store shelf you've ever been in.
The biggest barbecue sauce in the world.
Right.
In the world.
And so you talked a little bit about it earlier, and that was certainly something he talked about, was just learning and sharing with others who are in the business,
Yep.
who have gotten the feedback about what didn't work for them, and using their feedback to improve upon your own.
When Lily's Q, we started growing the sauces out of the restaurant. I used to make them in the restaurant for the first 4 years in the basement, and I just figured it out. I just did it. At one point, I actually had Dave Raymond down to eat lunch and just shoot the shit. Hey, what's going on? What is this? Like, how can you help me? I know you've been through some of this already. And he was very open. And I've always been one that like, I will spill you as much knowledge as I can possibly give you. Like when I go to a class, besides like some major, unless it's like a minor competition thing I do, I basically teach you exactly how I cook it in the restaurant. Exactly. If we don't pass down to the next generation, then some of this will die off, right? So
Right.
my mindset is, how do we get people more involved? How do we get younger people involved so that they want to hopefully carry the torch of this down the road sometime? My mindset is like, hey, hopefully when I die, Lily's Q Sauces will still be around, whether that's owned by some bigger company or somebody else, that I'm leaving something that hopefully people loved and enjoyed. It's
all legacy
all I really
based.
want to do. I just want to leave something that people love and enjoy. And if it was eating in my restaurant, great. Or if it's buying one of my sauces, that's great.
I love that mindset because I think similarly in that regard as well. Joe, you have any other questions about the products or where you can find them or
Yeah, why don't you tell us how can someone find your products?
I mean, obviously the easiest way is liliesq.com. Shipping's a little bit harder. So if you're looking for stuff in your neighborhood, we are in every Whole Foods in the country. We are in every Fresh Market. We're in a lot of Kroger's. We're in a lot of Kroger like offshoots like Albertsons, Safeways. We're in Mariano's in this area in Chicago. Mariano's, Jewel, all of them. So pretty much almost all your big box stores, and then a lot of specialties still carry us because we have the beautiful packaging. So you'll find us in like little shops too. But those are the major stores you can possibly find in, or always on liliesq.com. We also release some stuff on liliesq.com, and you can like follow us and be like a member of liliesq.com. So you'll get those updates. Like we do a bourbon barrel aged sauce where I age the sauce in bourbon barrels for 6 months. That's amazing, and we
amazing.
We release it once a year. It comes
awesome.
out in the springtime, and you'll get, if you're on the email list, then
I need to get my hands on some of them.
Yeah,
you get those things first.
Sign me up right now. I want some of that.
But that's one of those things where I when I first opened Lily's, we were doing all this craft beer because I was only doing, it was American food, so I was only doing American spirits, vodkas and everything, beer and everything, only American. And these brewers started coming in, and they were like sitting there at the bar talking about like how they age beer in bourbon barrels, and I was like, oh, that's pretty genius idea. Then I started drinking some of them. I was like, hell, let's throw sauce in one of these things and see what hell turns out. Came out pretty good. So now we release it once a year. Right. So those are the things that like I write down in my little notes that says, hey, this is an idea. I'm going to get to it at some point.
Man, I'd love to get in that kitchen. It sounds like you're a bit of a mad scientist down in there.
I have a lot
with
of
the beer and the bourbon and the sauces, the chips we mentioned earlier, right?
Potato chips.
How did you get into the chips, man? Come on, I got to hear this.
So we opened a little tiny like quick service model in a train station downtown called the French Market. It was basically one of your first food halls in Chicago. I had a stand that had no hood, so I couldn't do any deep frying or any type of smoking on property. So we smoked all the meats in Bucktown and we drove it down. Well, we couldn't do French fries, so we started doing we started frying our own potato chips in the restaurant and tossing them in like pimento cheese powder that we made, all these different powder rubs that we made ourselves. Before you know it, it was like the sauce. It started getting too much. We were selling too many chips, so we had to go find a co-packer. And then now we have, pimento cheese flavor, buttermilk and sweet onion, hot pepper vinegar.
That's what I'm talking
So
about.
all southern type flavors of potato chips. We have your normal original and sea salt and black pepper too. But like that's how it started. Most of this stuff starts at the restaurant. We needed it. It got too big. We couldn't do it anymore. So then we found a co-packer that could make them for us. Now we have bag chips that we sell at Jewel and some different. They're not quite as out there as the sauces, but they're starting to grow.
Is the majority of your co-packing done here in Chicago?
It's actually done out of St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha. That's cool. We'll have to talk off camera about that.
Yeah.
Probably know some of the same people.
I'm
in
sure
that.
you do. That's another small little close community. There's not tons of co-packers out there just
There's
making
really
all sorts
not.
of
And,
products. It's the funny thing.
Not only is there not a lot of co-packers, there's really only a handful of really good ones.
Yes,
There is. I don't mean to sound like saying that.
No,
but it's really true though. I mean,
Yes.
there's a lot of co-packers out there, Joe, that they are maximizing every single penny.
Yep.
That's going to make it really hard for guys in our industry to even
I mean, that was one of the hard things for me is like I made it in the restaurant. Then I went to a co-packer. So it took, before we could switch them, it took basically 6 months to get them, because they're not, if I'm using, let's say, ketchup, they're not using ketchup. They're using like tomato powder and this to make it feel like it is ketchup, because they can buy it in bulk and they can store it easier and all these things. So like when you go to a co-packer, you're basically business partners now. Even though you're separate businesses, you're technically business partners, because you're trying to get to the same goal, which is one, sell more barbecue sauce and keep the flavor profile exactly the same as you had it, let's say at your house or wherever else. So like you do need to find someone that you basically want to go in business with. And that's not the easiest thing to do.
And it's not, because a lot of these co-packers, Joe, I mean, you walk in there and they don't laugh at you, but they're like, listen, there's 100 people that are going to call me this week and want to come up with a rub.
Especially in BBQ Sauce and Rubs.
Yep.
It's probably more that than anything. Probably.
I've actually had venture capitalists that said they won't even look at the barbecue space because of how crowded it is.
Yep.
They're just like, nah, we're done with that.
Yeah.
And I disagree with that so much, because there's room for everybody in this community.
There was tons when Lily's Q came in, and we've grown to 10,000 grocery stores.
Yeah,
we
man.
positioned ourselves differently.
And what's that tell you? It means people are buying it.
It means people are buying it. Because if they weren't, we would be out of the store in a minute. Like these stores have, the stores are basically the mafia, man. If you ain't selling, you gone.
Well, and people don't realize you got brokers, you've got
distributors, you've got co-packers, you got
oh, dude.
There's people in between all this stuff, and then they wonder why stuff gets expensive. It's because
let's go
we
spend $25,000 to get in 500 grocery stores with a shipper.
And I just had this conversation with my boy. We're actually looking at some of your rubs, and I pulled one of them out. And, basically when you're a kid, you're taught about policeman, fireman, attorney, doctor, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
the major ones.
The major ones. I said, now look at this bottle of spices. Yeah. You know how many people had to touch this product to get it on our table? Yeah. The people who invented it, the people who helped pack it, the people who made the container that it goes in, the people who made the cap, which in all likelihood, then you got the label. Oh, and the people who designed the label and the glue that goes in the back of the label. I mean, on and on and on.
It's a huge business that
it is.
Hopefully, the good thing about COVID is grocery store sales have gone up for everybody, basically. So, but those are one of those things. Like if those type of businesses go away, you start to see drastic change. Not because that business went out of business, because it affects 15 other businesses. So how do you keep those things going and rolling? And
the sauce and spice market right now is up 30%.
Yeah,
across the board. Mm-hmm. We saw that the day of the TP debacle. He rode up here with me. And without talking numbers or anything like that, we were taken back. I mean, we were on the phone with our manufacturer immediately saying, hey, guys, we need some pallets now.
Oh, and then you got to think, oh, God, if everyone's up, what about my bottle? Oh, man, I better go find out where I get my bottle from and if they have enough stock and if they're making more. And then the labels, then the lids. Then, right now, you might see we use a black metal lid on our sauces. I mean, we use a white one. You may see a black one right now. We couldn't get the white ones. And so do you not make sauce and not bottle it? No, you make an adjustment because of COVID, and hopefully people understand, which I think they will because of the circumstances. But those are the type of things that you always have to be thinking a week out, not just what's right in front of my face.
Yeah, and as I have it hanging up on my wall, my home office. If it's meant to be, it's up to me, and that's really what it is as an independent business owner.
100%.
No matter what business you're in, it's so easy to live in excuses.
Yes.
And it's these external circumstances. But if you're willing to take 100% responsibility for everything that happens in your business, even if it is somebody else's fault, and live in that responsibility, my experience is that the outcome can just be tremendous when you take on that mindset.
I have a saying to people I say all the time whenever someone's like, oh, I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if that can happen. I don't know if this is we put a man on the moon in 3 days. I think we can figure out how to get this sauce made or this done or that done.
Right.
Put your head down and go do. Not so much worrying about what could happen. Right?
And at all
if
costs.
you get caught up in what's going to happen, you'll never do anything because, the circumstances against you are high. So if you think about those things, you will fail. Put those to the side and just go. And that's what I did. I just said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure out how I do it. I'm going to bottle this in the restaurant first. I'm going to go. I started hand pouring out of gallon jugs. Okay, how can I speed it up? I need a bottler. Where's a bottler? All right, Google.
Right.
Go find one, order it, get it in. Oh, now I'm faster, right? It's just putting your head down and doing things. And I think that's a lot of entrepreneurship is just you got to have drive. And if you don't, then you probably will not make it.
Right.
1,000% on that one, man. I think that's a good way to end this. Can we recap real quick where we can find all your stuff and if you're in Chicago, where to come eat at your restaurant?
Yeah, so obviously the products you can find at lilliesq.com or some grocery stores throughout the U.S. And then if you want to eat our barbecue, the main one is at 417 North Ashland. It's inside a brewery hall. So there's 4 breweries actually in one that combined so that they could have one brewing equipment.
That's awesome.
Because that business is obviously capital extensive. So we serve all the food for all the 4 breweries, and we'd love to have you come in and stop in. We have a huge patio, a lot of social distancing right now, so you can still get in there. But yeah, 417 North Ashland down in the Westtown neighborhood.
And down in Florida for your dad's place.
Florida is in, so it's in Miramar Beach, technically. It's in, if you know the area, it's halfway between Sandestin and the Outlet Mall on Highway 98. It's a little shack.
That's where Maverick flipped the inverted bird.
Yes.
So,
but yeah, it's a tiny little shack with a patio. You drive by it before you probably see it, but there's a big Lillies Q sign.
That's awesome, old man. Loved having you on here.
No, I love being here.
Yeah,
very informational.
Yeah, I just want to take and acknowledge all your hard work that you've put into your business and your brand. I want to wish you and your restaurant and business family continued success on your endeavor forward. To everyone who's watching at home, I just want to say, hey, if you like this video, you know the drill. Go ahead and hit that big thumbs up like button, or even better, subscribe to our channel for future updates. Let us know what you thought about our interview today in the comments below. If you're listening to this, the biggest compliment you could give us is a positive review on iTunes. 5 stars, leave a great comment, and as Mike said, pop into Lillie's Q, try some of their stuff, order online. Once again, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Please, everyone at home, follow along as we continue to meet America.
Subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel at redmeatlover.com and learn more at meetamericapodcast.com.